Welcome to the True Crime Channel stories, and we have another crime that was brilliantly solved. On August 26, 2015, in South Australia, near the town of Mannheim, 20-year-old Jody Myers and her fiancé, 29-year-old Neil Archer, were celebrating the birthday of the girl's stepfather. The party was in full swing, but the couple did not share the general fun. The fact is that Neil did not want to attend the celebration at all, and stubbornly sat in the car. Jody, who could have been chatting by the fireplace with her loved ones and enjoying the holiday, had to run back and forth to the car and beg the guy to come into the house. Some of the guests even brought Neil treats in the hope that it would cheer him up and he would join the others. But the young man was adamant. At around 8:30 p.m., the pair left the party and their argument continued at home. It ended with Judy telling Neil that they had broken up. The next day, Lucy, the girl's mother, received a text message about her daughter, who wrote that she couldn't be at her place tonight as she had broken up with Neil yesterday and changed her phone number. She would later let her parents know where she was. For now, she has moved to a different neighborhood and quit her job. When everything falls into place, she will definitely give details about what happened. The daughter also wrote that she is safe. Her comrades are beside her, and she loves her loved ones madly. The text was rather clumsy, lacking punctuation marks. Lucy found a few spelling mistakes, which made her anxious. According to her mother, Jody had no problems with spelling and grammar, and even if she made a mistake, she corrected it immediately, for example, by resending the text. In this case, she did not do that. Of course, it could be explained by the fact that the girl was in a hurry or under stress, because the night before she left her fiancé. On top of that, she had to change her phone number, which she reported via SMS. It's just not clear why Jody had to waste time writing, if her head was already spinning. It's no wonder that neither Lucy nor Jody's sisters believed that she had sent the text herself. Sister Tanya pointed out that the style of the text was different from Jody's inherent style of expression. In addition, the girl would never leave her 2-year-old son Elijah, whom she gave birth to from Neil. Relatives were absolutely sure of this. The boy was the meaning of the young mother's life. She deeply loved him and, according to friends and relatives, would take him with her if she decided to leave. This last fact prompted the family to report Jody missing to the police. The housemates did not want to believe that something terrible could have happened, but were afraid of missing time. Some suspicions were already brewing in their heads, and they feared that the police wouldn't take it seriously. It was not uncommon for reports to be ignored, especially when it comes to the disappearance of young women who have quarreled with their fiancés. Often the offended girls leave home on their own, so that alone at a distance to comprehend what happened and vent their emotions. However, to the statement of Jody's family, police officers took great attention, and they were alarmed that the girl abandoned her child, and they could not brush off such a strange case. Concerned detectives immediately began their search. The general excitement increased when it became clear that someone had used the girl's bank card. The sum of $250 had been withdrawn from a downtown ATM. It appeared that either Jody was not far away and simply did not want to return, or the unknown person was trying to frame it that way. Soon it was officially announced about the disappearance of the girl, and the investigation began. Jody's story made headlines throughout South Australia. First of all, the investigators questioned everyone from the close circle of the missing woman, her fiancé, 3 sisters, brother, friends, but no one could provide any valuable information about Jody's whereabouts, except, of course, her fiancé Neil, because he was the last person who saw her. Neil told police that he and Jody continued to argue on the way home after the party. During the drive, he said, the girl threw her ring out the window in anger. Police later tried to find the jewelry. And Neil also said he last saw Jody getting into a red Nissan X-Trail car in the company of a man and a woman he did not know. Police released this information, hiding the fact that Neil Archer was the only person of interest to them. Authorities said that at this stage he was simply a useful witness for the investigation. In fact, detectives had no other suspects. Extensive searches were conducted in the surrounding area, including the local bushland where Jody was last seen. Neil and Jody's police house and Mary River were examined, but no trace of the young mother was found. The ring, which the girl allegedly threw out the car window, could not be found either, despite the fact that Neil showed the alleged location. The case began to gain momentum. Relatives, friends, and acquaintances periodically appeared in the media, telling the situation and making various statements. One of those who spoke out was Neil's mother, 55-year-old Marguerite Archer. When asked about how her son Jody Elijah was doing, she said that the boy had been led to believe that his mom had gone shopping and would be home soon. Marguerite added that everyone is hoping for her return as her son needs her. The woman then turned to Jody as well, asking her to show up soon or contact someone and let them know that she was okay. Neil, of course, also made a few statements to reporters who have waited outside his house or seen him playing with his son on more than one occasion. The guy has taken the increased attention calmly, saying only that it's stressing him out a bit, but he's happy to help authorities with the investigation. But let's get back to talking about the fact that Jody's bank card was used the day after she disappeared, because that's a really important point in this story. Police officers requested surveillance footage from the security cameras above the central ATM and were shocked by what they saw. It wasn't Jody or even Neil who had withdrawn the money, as had been suspected. It was a woman dressed in a hooded sweatshirt with a hood pulled over her head. No doubt she wanted to conceal her identity. It didn't take the detectives long to figure out who the mystery woman was. She turned out to be Neil's mother, Margaret. Withdrawing the cash certainly didn't make her a killer, but the thief was arrested for theft. It was not known exactly under what pretext the woman took possession of Jody's bank card, and then used it after the girl disappeared. It was possible that Margaret needed money and simply stole the card or asked Jody for it, because they were close acquaintances. Whatever the case, the woman vehemently denied her involvement in Jody's disappearance, both to the police and publicly. After questioning and explanations, Margaret was released on bail. But this strange occurrence prompted investigators to scrutinize her actions at the time Jody went missing. Some interesting things came to light. For example, detectives found 2 receipts for purchases from 2 different hardware stores. Margaret had purchased 10 bags of cement from one hardware store and 10 bags from the other, as well as a wheelbarrow. The purchases were quite unusual and were staggering in volume. Investigators wanted to confirm that it was Margaret who had made them. They went to the store where Neil's mother had visited 3 days after Jody's disappearance. After reviewing the CCTV footage, they saw Margaret had indeed purchased a huge amount of cement. But what did she need so much for? Of course, buying construction material is not a crime, but the detectives needed to get an explanation one way or another, especially since the purchase of this product was paid for by the exact amount the woman withdrew from the ATM. The police would have been lost in speculation for a long time if they had not talked to Margaret's husband, Lawrence. According to the latter, the day Jody disappeared, he was in Tasmania. When he returned home, however, his son said he had a Father's Day present for him. Neil was rarely generous, so Lawrence was overcome with curiosity. The son asked his father to step out into the yard, and together they walked over to the shed, inside of which lay a fresh slab of concrete that Neil had just laid. The man was surprised by the surprise, as he considered his son to be somewhat lazy and selfish. It was impossible not to notice that Neil had done a terribly laborious job of pouring cement into the ground. The father thanked his son for the gift, and immediately, distracted, began to tell him about his trip to Tasmania. After hearing this story, the detectives realized that the puzzle was falling into place, and Neil was no longer the usual witness, but suspect number 1. There was one other person involved in Jody's disappearance who had a guilty conscience about something he knew and couldn't tell anyone to avoid implicating his family. This was Neil's brother, Aaron, and he was unwilling to perform certain tasks at the request of his family. Which tasks I'll tell you later. He learned something that alarmed him greatly. His brother had tried to convince Neil to turn himself in to the police. When Neil flatly refused, Aaron had no choice but to go to the police station and tell them everything. On September 24, 2015, at 1 a.m., Neil Archer agreed to meet officers at an agreed-upon location after his brother's visit to the police station. Neil was soon taken into custody, arrested and formally charged with the murder of his fiancée Jody Myers. And a day later, investigators began searching Lawrence and Margaret's home in the town of Mannheim, which is about an hour and a half away from Deloitte. That same day, forensic investigators discovered the woman's body buried in a shallow grave. The hole had been dug under a fresh concrete slab inside a barn, the same slab that had been a Father's Day gift for Lawrence. Forensics confirmed that the body belonged to Jody Myers. At that point, it had been a month since her disappearance. Investigators issued a statement saying that a violent murder was likely to have occurred. Afterward, Jody's brother-in-law spoke publicly and said that loved ones had hoped for Jody's safe return until the bad news broke. The girl's death will leave an indelible void in their hearts. But the good memories of a loving mother, daughter, and sister who could not be blamed for anything would stay with them forever. All the relatives have from now on our memories, and there is nothing more precious than them. A few months later, Neil's mother Margaret, the same one who had stolen $250 from Jody's card and bought a bunch of cement, was back in custody awaiting trial on charges of involvement in the girl's murder. She was still struggling to prove her innocence. Neil's father, Lawrence, is not believed to have known anything about what happened. Now, let me briefly recount what really happened that gruesome night and fill in some of the gaps in the story. When Jody and Neil got home from the party, they had a serious fight. Neil believed that his fiancé's parents didn't like him and was convinced that they wanted to separate the couple. In a fit of rage, the young man lost control of himself and began to strangle Jody with the cord from his sweatshirt until she stopped breathing. Later, it was reported that Neil, being in the cell and communicating with other prisoners, said that his mother was really present in the house during the quarrel and held Jody. However, this could not be proven. The next day, Neil asked his mother to help him cover up the evidence of the crime, and Margaret coldly agreed to destroy the evidence pointing to the murder of the one who had given birth to her grandson. Just thinking about it sent shivers down my spine. The woman bought cement by withdrawing money from an ATM and topped up Jody's phone with $10 to send clumsy messages to Lucy, the dead woman's mother. As mentioned, the message raised suspicion because it looked a bit odd and didn't look like something Jody might have written. Basically, it turned out that Neil made his mother do all the dirty work for him. It's also worth noting that Margaret has been a victim of domestic violence herself in the past. How strange and wild that having been in such a position, she still agreed to cover up the traces of this heartbreaking crime. Many consider it abnormal, no matter how much a mother loves her son. It is not believable that she would find an excuse to help him in such a horrible situation. But at the same time, there are parents who claim they would do anything for their children. Margaret probably belonged to the latter number, and it's truly horrible. But it's even scarier to realize the fact that Jody's young son partially witnessed what happened. 2-year-old Elijah was sitting in the car while Margaret went to the thrift stores and paid for her purchases. It also emerged that the child was at Margaret's house when his mother's body was moved there by Neil and buried in the shed. The information that emerged as the case unfolded was increasingly shocking to the public. Police recorded phone conversations between Margaret and Neil where they discussed covering up the crime. They had no way of resolving the issue and both felt very guilty. In their conversations, they also mentioned Neil's brother, Aaron. Margaret tried to involve her second son in what was going on and then his half-sister. The woman forced them both to burn their clothes and destroy evidence such as semen bags. But Aaron cleverly refused to comply and eventually went to the police. Now, with the passage of time, one can recognize how stupid these two people, Neil and Margaret, were. They made mistakes at literally every turn and most likely seriously believed that crime would get them off with time served. In 2016, Neil Archer pleaded guilty to the murder of Jody Myers, sparing her friends and family from a harrowing trial. In 2017, he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum parole term after 22 years. That's a pretty good result by Australian standards, and it's also heartening to see the murderer plead guilty. In South Australia, you can get a sentence reduction for pleading guilty by about 30%, but the judge felt Neil didn't deserve it. It is worth noting that Jody's friends and family were pleased with this verdict. As for Neil's mother, Margaret, she stalled until the last and did not admit to what she had done. But in the end, the woman did change her statement and admitted guilt. Her lawyer stated that, in general, Margaret led an impeccable life and genuinely cared for her large family. However, considering that she waited patiently until the last minute, not wanting to confess to the crime, we can draw a simple conclusion: Margaret is not at all remorseful for her act. In 2018, she was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison for assisting a criminal and was released in June 2022. But she was almost immediately handed over to the border, from where she was deported to her home country, the UK. As far as is known, she is still free and living there as well. As for little Elijah, he is in the care of his grandmother Lucy. Thanks for watching. I recommend you check out the other true crime stories as well. Click right away. And don't forget to click the bell so you don't miss out on new stories. See you soon. Take care.